quiet cradle of night, when the world holds its breath in hushed anticipation, there lies a winding path known only to a few, a path traced in stardust and soft sighs, where dreams are spun and serenity is stitched into the soul. It begins not with thunder, but with the gentle hush of wind through moonlit leaves, and the soft thrum of a heartbeat searching for something more. Auden had always felt different when the stars came out. By day, he moved like everyone else among flickering screens and endless noise. But at night, when the world dimmed and the sky exhaled silver, he felt at the pull, a presence like a melody remembered from childhood. He didn't know where it came from, only that it whispered his name like a promise. And tonight, standing barefoot on the cool stones of his apartment balcony, he finally listened. The sky shimmered subtly, and the air thickened with something old and knowing, as if answering a long-forgotten invitation. Closed his eyes. He didn't remember stepping off the balcony. He didn't remember falling, only that the next moment his feet touched warm earth veiled in twilight, and he stood beneath an indigo canopy dusted with constellations that pulsed like slow, steady breaths. He was not alone. Across a silver-threaded meadow, a figure stood watching him. She wore a cloak of shadows and candlelight, her hair braided with strands of the night itself. Her name, though he had never heard it spoken, filled him with the aching familiarity of a lullaby. "Lies. You found the path," she said, her voice low, as if speaking inside his heart rather than into his ears. "I didn't know I was looking," he replied. She smiled, sad and tender. "You always were." They walked, not in haste, but with the kind of grace that comes from trusting where your feet are meant to go. The dream weaver's path shimmered beneath them, alive with glimmers of memories and unspoken wishes. Each step took them deeper, not into the woods or a dream, but into something quieter than either, a place where forgotten parts of the self waited patiently to be remembered. Lies showed him how to listen to the silences between thoughts, how to weave his worries into clouds that would drift away on the breeze. She showed him how sorrow could be softened, not erased, but made gentle by understanding. There was something about the way she spoke, like she had been broken once too, and had stitched her soul back together with threads of moonlight. But just as calm began to settle in his chest like fog on a lake at dawn, he noticed the shadows growing longer. Not darker, no, but deeper, and in their depths echoes stirred. "What is this place, really?" Auden asked, pausing on the path as the stars blinked above. Lies looked toward the horizon, where a faint glow flickered like a candle almost out of reach. "This is where the truth sleeps, and sometimes," she said, her voice quiet, "truth dreams too." He wanted to ask more, but a sudden wind tugged at her cloak, and when he reached to catch it, his hand passed through air. "Lies," he breathed. She stood across from him now, her figure becoming less solid, like mist unraveling. "The path ends soon, Auden, but not all endings are farewells." "No," he said. "No, I don't want to wake up. Not yet." She smiled then, and it hurt in a beautiful way. "You're not waking up, you're waking in." The last thing he saw before the light claimed her was a single tear sliding down her cheek, not of sorrow, but of knowing. Then she was gone, and Auden was standing in his room once more. But it was not the same room. The air felt different, softer, like the hush of a page turning in a beloved book. His chest felt lighter. Outside, the wind still danced through the trees, but now it sounded like laughter. He looked down. In his palm lay a thread of silver, shimmering with warmth. a gift, a promise. He didn't know what it meant exactly, but he felt it calm like still waters, serenity like the space between heartbeats, and something deeper still, connection. As he curled into bed, stars blinking softly beyond the window, the world around him exhaled. Somewhere on the edge of dream and waking, a path waited to be walked again. And if you listen, really listen, you might hear it calling your name too quietly, tenderly. Because the dream weaver's path is always there, waiting to be remembered. Auden lay there in the quiet, staring at the ceiling, his mind swirling with the echo of Liza's words. He could still feel her presence like a warm glow that lingered just beyond his reach. It was as if the world had shifted subtly, and the very air around him felt charged with possibility. He knew, deep within his bones, that this wasn't just a dream. It was something else, something far more real, and yet impossibly distant. The silver thread in his hand began to pulse softly, as if alive. He held it gently, tracing the curve of its delicate weave. How had it come to him? Where had it come from? He had no answers, only the deep, unshakable feeling that it was his to follow wherever it might lead. And so the days passed, each one marked by a subtle shift in his thoughts, a quiet peace settling into his routine. But in the stillness of his heart, there was always the soft pull of that path, the one Liza had shown him, where truth and dreams intertwined like threads of light. The feeling that something was coming, something more than what he had known, grew stronger with every passing night. It was on the third evening after that dream, as the sun dipped below the horizon, that Auden felt it again, the pull. This time he didn't hesitate. He slipped on his shoes, stepped out onto the balcony, and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he was no longer on his balcony. Instead, he stood at the edge of the meadow, the same silver thread curling through his fingers. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine, and the stars overhead twinkled with a clarity that seemed almost too perfect to be real. The path stretched out before him, glowing faintly with the same shimmering light that had danced beneath his feet the night he met Liza. A whisper tickled his ear, and Auden turned quickly, but there was no one there. Only the soft rustling of the leaves, as if the very world was alive with secrets. He started walking, the grass cool beneath his feet, the thread in his hand steady and warm. It felt like a promise, a silent guide. He walked for what felt like hours, each step taking him deeper into a dream he couldn't quite grasp, yet felt destined to follow. And then, as he rounded a bend in the path, he saw her again. Liza stood at the edge of a small pond, her silhouette framed by the glow of the stars. She didn't look at him, but he felt her presence like a heartbeat. He stepped closer, the soft sound of his footsteps barely disturbing the tranquility of the night. Liza, he called softly, unsure if she could hear him. She turned slowly, and when her eyes met his, there was an unspoken understanding between them, something that went beyond words. "You came back," she said, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed to fill the entire meadow. "I couldn't stay away," Auden replied, the words feeling too simple, yet perfectly true. He took a step toward her, and she smiled, that same sad, knowing smile from before. "Not everyone can find the path again," she said, her voice soft and distant. "But you did. You found it because you were ready." Auden felt something shift within him, something he couldn't explain. It was as if the very fabric of his being had loosened, like a knot untangling itself slowly, thread by thread. He took another step closer, his heart thudding softly in his chest. Ready for what? Liza's eyes softened, and for the first time she seemed to hesitate. Ready to see the truth, she whispered, to understand that dreams are not just things we have when we sleep. They are what we are deep inside, and when we listen, truly listen, we can find a way to weave them into the waking world. Auden's heart raced. He felt it, the tug of something far greater than he had imagined, something ancient yet profoundly familiar. The thread in his hand pulsed again, and he understood. He wasn't just walking this path for himself. He was walking it for all the forgotten pieces of the world, the dreams that had been discarded, the hopes that had been abandoned, the love that had been lost. "Are you going to leave me again?" he asked quietly, the question hanging between them like a fragile thing. Liza's gaze softened, her smile gentle. "I never truly left. I've always been here, waiting for you to remember." Auden felt something stir inside him, a quiet recognition that made his throat tighten. He wanted to ask her so many things about the path, about the dreams, about why he had been chosen. But all the words felt too small, too insignificant compared to the vastness of what he was beginning to understand. Instead, he simply reached out, letting the silver thread between them connect them in a way deeper than touch. She took it, her fingers brushing his, and in that moment the air seemed to hum with a quiet power, a power that spoke of ancient truths, of love unspoken, of paths waiting to be walked, and of dreams that had yet to be born. Together they stood there by the pond, the stars above them like silent witnesses, and for the first time in his life, Auden felt at peace, as if the universe had finally unfolded, and he was exactly where he needed to be. He knew deep in his heart that the path wasn't just a journey, it was a story, and he was only at the beginning. The night stretched out around them, timeless and still, as Auden stood with Liz by the shimmering pond. The silver thread between them pulsed with a rhythm that felt like the heartbeat of the world itself. There was an unspoken invitation in the air, as if the universe had paused, holding its breath, waiting for them to take the next step. Liza's presence was both soothing and mysterious, as though she were made of the very night sky, and yet there was something deeply human in her eyes, something that mirrored his own longing, his own quiet fears. He had never known a connection like this, where the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, standing at the edge of a vast, uncharted sea of possibility. "I still don't understand," Auden murmured, his voice barely above the wind's whisper. "What am I meant to do with this path, Liz? What does it mean?" Liz tilted her head slightly, considering him with a softness that made his chest tighten. "The path is not a thing to be understood all at once. It is a journey, not a destination. It will reveal itself as you walk it." She paused, her gaze far away, as if seeing something he couldn't. "But the question you should be asking, Auden, is not, what does it mean? It is, what are you willing to become?" His breath caught. What was he willing to become? It was a question that rang with the clarity of truth. The thread in his hand seemed to tighten, its warmth seeping into him, grounding him in a way he hadn't felt before. He was no longer sure if he was dreaming or awake, or if perhaps the two had become one, woven together in a way that defied explanation. "I don't know," he whispered, looking down at the thread, tracing its delicate strands. "I want to understand, but I'm scared. I don't know if I'm ready." Liz's hand gently cupped his, the warmth of her touch grounding him in a way words never could. "You are always ready, Auden. Fear is not something to defeat, but something to understand. It is the veil that shrouds what you cannot yet see. But remember this, the path does not ask for perfection. It asks for courage, for honesty, for the willingness to face what is hidden. and to let it change you. He felt a stirring deep within him, something he had been holding back for far too long. There was so much within him that had been buried, old dreams, regrets, desires, even love he had been too afraid to give. And yet, here on this quiet path, with lies beside him, those things began to surface like bubbles rising to the surface of a still pond. "I don't know how to let go," he confessed, his voice breaking slightly. "I've spent so long holding on to things, trying to control them, to keep myself safe." Lies smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that filled him with both comfort and sadness. "Safety is an illusion, Auden. The truth is, the more we try to protect ourselves from pain, the more we close ourselves off from love. You cannot have one without the other. The path will show you that too." Auden closed his eyes, her words settling over him like a quiet rain. The weight of them was heavy, but not in a crushing way, more like a gentle release, a letting go of the walls he had built so carefully around his heart. He had always been afraid of love, afraid of the vulnerability it demanded. But now, standing in this dreamlike place, with Liza's steady presence beside him, he realized something he hadn't before. He was tired of being afraid. "Lies," he said, opening his eyes to meet her gaze. "What if I'm not strong enough?" She stepped closer, her presence both comforting and mysterious, and placed her hand on his chest over his heart. "Strength does not come from perfection, Auden. It comes from the willingness to be broken, to be soft, and to trust that you will be whole again." For a long moment they simply stood there, the stars above them watching in silence. The air was thick with unspoken promises, and Auden felt the weight of the world, his world shifting, rearranging itself around him. He had spent so long in the comfort of his own small life, hiding from the larger truth that had always been just beyond his reach. And now the truth was standing right in front of him, offering him the chance to step into something greater, something His gaze dropped to the silver thread again, still warm in his hand. He realized then that it was no longer just a thread, it was a lifeline, a way forward, a bridge to a world he had never imagined, yet somehow always known in the quietest corners of his heart. "I'm ready," he whispered, more to himself than to her. "I think I am ready to walk the path." Lies nodded, her eyes soft with understanding. "Then let us walk it together." And so they did. The path stretched before them, twisting and turning through the meadow under the canopy of stars. Each step seemed to open a door to a new part of Auden's soul, a part he had never fully explored. As they walked, the silver thread in his hand began to unravel slowly, weaving itself into the fabric of the world around them. The stars above seemed to hum with life, and the very air shimmered with possibility. Auden felt lighter, freer than he had in years. The fear that had once gripped him so tightly seemed to slip away with every step, and in its place something else bloomed, something tender, something full of hope. He didn't know where the path would lead or what would await him at its end, but in that moment it didn't matter. What mattered was that he was walking it, and that somehow was enough. The night stretched on, the stars overhead burning brighter with each passing hour, as the dream weaver's path wound its way through the silence, carrying Auden and Lies into the heart of something far greater than either could fully comprehend, something ancient, something eternal. And with every step they took, the world around them seemed to shift just a little bit more into focus, until at last they understood that they were not just walking the path, they were becoming it. The journey unfolded in ways Auden could not have anticipated. As the night deepened, the meadow seemed to stretch endlessly before him, each step on the path feeling like an invitation into the heart of the universe itself. There was a rhythm to their walk now, a quiet harmony between them. Auden and Lai's two souls intertwined in a way that words could never capture, moving forward with purpose, yet without haste. The stars above, those ancient flickering sentinels, seemed to whisper secrets only they could hear, their light bathing the path in a soft, ethereal glow. The air was filled with a sense of timelessness, and the deeper Auden walked, the more he realized that this was not just a journey across space, it was a journey through time itself. Every step brought him closer to something he had always known, but had never truly understood until now. At times the path grew narrow, surrounded by tall, dark trees whose branches reached like hands towards the heavens. At other moments it opened into vast fields of soft grass, where the night sky stretched wide and endless. But through it all, Liz remained by his side, her presence a constant, steady comfort. She didn't speak often, but when she did, her words were like gentle ripples on a calm pond, small, yet profound. "I used to fear this path," told him one night, her voice soft as they walked side by side, the stars overhead shining like ancient promises. "I thought it would consume me, pull me into the darkness where I couldn't find my way back. But then I realized, the darkness is not something to fear. It is simply part of the path. Without it, the light would not shine as brightly." Auden nodded, the weight of her words settling into his heart. He had spent so much of his life fearing the dark, the unknown, the hidden corners of his own heart, the quiet places where his fears and doubts lived. But now, as he walked beside Liz, he understood. The dark was not something to avoid. It was simply a part of the whole, an essential counterpart to the light. And as they continued on, the path began to change once more. The trees thinned and the meadow opened into a vast, shimmering lake, its surface reflecting the starlit sky above. In the center of the lake, a small island sat like a jewel, its shores glowing faintly in the moonlight. Auden paused, staring at the island, his breath caught in his chest. "What is that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Liz's gaze followed his, and for a moment she seemed distant, lost in the beauty of the scene. "That is the heart of the path," she said quietly. "The place where everything comes together, the place where dreams are made whole." The silver thread, which had been pulsing gently in Auden's hand, suddenly tightened, pulling him forward. Without thinking, he stepped onto the surface of the lake, his feet leaving no trace on the water as he walked across its smooth, glass-like surface. The thread guided him, drawing him toward the island, and Liz followed silently behind him. As they reached the island, the ground beneath their feet became soft like a bed of moss, and in the center of the island stood a great tree, its bark glowing with a soft, silvery light. The tree was unlike any Auden had ever seen. Its branches stretched high into the sky, its roots deep within the earth, and its leaves shimmered with the same light as the stars. It was the heart of the world, the place where dreams were born and woven into reality. Liz stepped beside Auden, her hand reaching out to touch the tree. "This is where the path ends," she said, her voice filled with awe. "Where the threads of all lives, all dreams, all truths converge." Auden's fingers brushed against the bark, and in that instant he felt the weight of every moment he had lived, the moments of joy and pain, love and loss, fear and hope. It was as though the tree was pulling all of those threads together, weaving them into a single harmonious tapestry. His heart swelled with a deep sense of peace, and yet there was an ache, a longing, as though something was just out of reach. "This is where I let go, isn't it?" Auden whispered, his voice thick with emotion. This is where I let go of all the things I've held on to. Lies nodded, her eyes shining with the same quiet understanding. Yes, to walk this path is to release what no longer serves you, to trust that what you need will always find its way to you. Auden closed his eyes, feeling the soft pulse of the tree beneath his fingertips, and in that moment he understood. It was not the path that had been leading him, it was his own heart. He had always known the way, but had been too afraid to follow it. The fear, the doubts, the need for control of it had been weighing him down, holding him in place. But now, as he stood in the heart of the path, he felt lighter. He felt whole. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady, the words ringing with a quiet certainty. "I'm ready to let go." The silver thread in his hand unraveled, drifting into the night air like 1,000 tiny stars, each one carrying a piece of his past, a fragment of his soul. The tree's light grew brighter, surrounding him in a soft, radiant glow, and for the first time, Auden felt truly free. Lies stepped back, her smile both bittersweet and full of knowing. "Been ready, Auden. The path was never the thing you needed to find. It was the courage to walk it that was waiting for you." And with that, she was gone. Not with a flash, not with a whisper, but with a softness, as if the world had simply folded her back into the fabric of the night. Auden stood alone beneath the glowing tree, but he no longer felt lonely. The path, the dreams, the stars, all of it had woven together into something greater than he had ever imagined. It was as if he had become one with everything, his fears, his joys, his past, and his future woven into a single infinite thread that connected him to the world around him. The night held its breath for just a moment longer before the stars began to fade into the first light of dawn, and as Auden looked up, he knew that the path had not ended, it had only just begun. The journey of becoming, of understanding, of weaving his dreams into the world had only begun. And in the quiet of the morning, as the sun began to rise, Auden felt a peace deeper than any he had ever known. A peace that was not of this world, but of the heart. And with that peace, he stepped forward into the new day, ready to continue the journey of his life, no longer searching for answers because he had already found them within himself.